Hello, my name is Adejoke Yusuf, and I will be talking to an amazing personality today, and that is Mr. Tunji Odumuboni. He's the ED Africa for Emtech. Hello.
Hello, Joke.
Good to have you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
All right. So let's just go quickly into why you're here. I can see you wearing Emtech. That's amazing. So tell us about Emtech.
Yes, thank you very much, Joke. Emtech is a software provider, and we are really, really privileged to be partnering with a lot of central banks across the globe. And we delight ourselves in providing solutions, innovative technology solutions for central banks. If you look at the financial services sector globally, it's a sector that is really, really critical to the way people live, spend money, and all of that. And we're seeing a lot of innovation in that space. So the financial services providers are innovating, the banks, commercial banks, retail banks, microfinance banks, everybody is
mortgage
innovating.
banks.
But you also have a lot of startups, a number of fintechs that are emerging, creating innovation in different parts of financial services.
Especially among young people.
Absolutely. And it's really important that they are able to innovate in a way that is safe. And that's why the central banks are there. And central banks really understand the opportunities of this innovation, but they are also concerned about some of the risks that may come with the innovation. So I think with the emerging ecosystem that we are seeing, we're also seeing an emerging central banking world, a world that needs to be enabled by technology as well. And that's where we are positioning ourselves uniquely to support the digitization of central banking, the modernization of central banking. So Emtech is a provider of technology solutions for central banks in very strategic areas of central banking. One is in the area of regulation, which always go hand in hand with supervision. So we're enabling central banks across Africa.
Across Africa.
We are engaged. We are engaged with a number of central banks across Africa. I'm working currently with a few of them, particularly when it comes to the area of regulatory sandbox, which is a technology that enables regulation and supervision of innovation, whether from startup or from existing financial services providers that are looking to innovate. On the other hand, there's also a lot of changes we're seeing to the face of currency. And, currency has always changed face from what it used to be many centuries ago, where, it was trade and barter to cowries to, what we know today as banknotes and coins, right? And that is also changing. Over the last decade or so, we've seen emergence of private money, which a lot of people refer to as cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin being one of the most popular of those. But that has also made the central banks to realize that there are certain capabilities that money can have in the digital form, which the electronic version of money that you have that most of the commercial banks provide today does not necessarily have, which is where the concept of central bank digital currency comes to bear. So we are also very privileged to be providing infrastructures to help central banks digitize currency, usually a digital version of currency. So Emtech is a solution provider for central banks, solutions that also impact the ecosystem they serve.
Absolutely. That is what takes me to the next question, because I know that Emtech is doing something with Central Bank of Nigeria, not just any central bank. What is it that you're doing with Central Bank?
Right. Thank you so much. I think we're doing something, as we said, and we're hoping to do much more as we grow the partnership with the Central Bank. We are currently working with the Central Bank with regards to digitizing the regulatory sandbox environment of the CBN. Regulatory sandboxes, just as a way of introduction to that concept, is not something new. We've seen a number of central banks adopt the concept of sandboxing over the last few years. Examples are the Financial Conduct Authority of the UK, FCA, Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, also has one. And there are quite a number of regulators across the globe actually putting sandboxes in place. And what does it do? It's a space where innovators can come and deploy their solution so that real customers can use that solution. But in that space, the regulator is also able to understand that solution so that they can understand how best to regulate it. Prior to the advent of such a solution, the typical reaction you will get from a regulator is, you can't go to market with your solution, because if an innovation is not covered within the existing regulatory framework, it's really difficult, because financial services is very risky. Imagine giving your earnings in form of maybe your salaries or your saving, and then entrusting into the hand of a bank or a fintech. You want to be sure. You want to be sure that anytime you need that money, it's always going to be there. Absolutely. And that's why the regulator is there to make sure consumers' rights are protected. So consumer protection. Consumer protection. But when innovation comes to bear, and the person providing this innovation has the right ideas in terms of trying to solve a problem, because as much as we have banks today, there are certain aspects of banking that is still not addressing the needs of the people, which is why we have a number of customers that are financially out of the financial ecosystem, so to speak. So they are not included, either because they don't have access to the financial service. Some people are in remote parts of the world that financial service is not penetrating. So you are seeing innovation, and we've seen quite a bit that, you can do, for instance, in most parts of Africa, you can do mobile money transactions. To another country. So even if you don't have internet access, or you don't have a smartphone device, you can, on a feature phone, you can do that. That's innovation. Absolutely. That has brought a lot more people. But you are seeing a lot more drastic innovation. That means that the regulator would say no, rightly so, because the innovation is new. But how do you ensure that you don't say no to something that can have a game-changing impact? You need a space to, allow them thrive with some form of guardrails. So that
prove themselves.
Yes, they prove the solution, you can learn. And that's what the concept of regulatory sandboxing is all about. So what we are doing is to enable regulators to then transform that particular tool from being a paper-based tool that defines what an innovator can do in that space to a digital platform that enables the regulator to, one, admit the innovators into that space. Two, also, almost on a real-time basis, get insight, data that enables them.
Faster too.
Yes, enable them to learn from what the innovators are doing. So, in a nutshell, that's what a regulatory sandbox is. And about. To your question about what we're doing is regulate the CBN. It's really essentially helping the CBN digitize that framework.
Instead of the usual, from you submit your proposal from this table to this table.
Yes, absolutely. To that table. So the process can be, digitized end to end, and we have built a platform that we believe can change the game when it comes to how innovation is regulated. And we think that can have a massive impact in terms of go-to-market for fintechs. We think that can have a transformative impact in terms of efficiency of regulation, in terms of effectiveness of regulation as well. So regulation has to have the right impact. It shouldn't stifle innovation, but it shouldn't overlook the risk.
The risk as well.
But how do you
be balanced?
Yes. How do you manage the risk? Is getting insight into that risk. So a regulatory sandbox that is API led, that enable real time generation of insight for the regulators, because the regulator is able to integrate with whatever it is that the innovators are doing, and able to get data, process the data real time, visualize the data, make strategic regulatory decisions as to whether to continue to observe the solution in the sandbox, or as to whether the innovation is mature enough to then allow them go to market and license. Absolutely.
Okay. That is fantastic. You guys are doing amazingly well. How will that benefit CBN and the ecosystem at large, this relationship, this sandbox that you have brought?
Absolutely. I think, like I started talking about, there are transformative value that we see when it comes to the impact of a regulatory sandbox. One of them, when you take an ecosystem perspective, everybody has something to benefit. The consumer is what I would like to talk about first of all. Okay. When you think about the consumer,
because you mentioned consumer protection.
Yes. When you think about the consumer, as a consumer, you just need a service, right? And whoever shows up and can catch your attention is most likely the one that you will buy from.
Absolutely.
So you really don't know the details around who is regulated and who is not.
Sure.
And if innovators don't have an opportunity to get regulated, they tend to find their ways of still getting their solution to market, albeit in a very under the hood way.
Yes.
And
like black market way.
You have undiscerning customers.
Yes. That just fall prey.
Right? Okay. So the first thing that you get from this kind of innovation is you have an ecosystem that is innovative, but regulated. Okay. And what that then means is that, as a consumer, you are sure that somebody is setting rules for the players. Somebody is looking at what they are doing. And if you have an issue, your rights will be protected as a consumer.
You know where to report.
Exactly. And also, in terms of consumer experience and consumer options and consumer delight, having a regulatory sandbox enable competition, because innovations can then do more.
Exactly.
And what competition does for the consumer is that the providers want to become better.
They will do more, yes.
Right?
And it gives you options for choosing their varieties.
Absolutely. So consumers will get the best of what is available. So you can see that for the consumer. For the financial services providers, whether you are an incumbent or you are a startup, you have a business objective to grow, to scale, or to even establish yourself. Okay. And if you don't have a means to go to market, for example, if you are a startup and you have this brilliant idea and you are trying to bring that idea into a space like payment that should be rightly regulated, but there's no means for you to get that regulation done.
You may not even get the funding.
You won't get to the market. You won't get the funding. Even when you go to market, it will be small scale. The investors would be concerned that you can possibly get shut down.
Exactly.
So there's only so much you can gain. Yeah. And I started talking about investors as well. So think about investors. Investors want to invest in this innovation, and they need their investment to be de-risked. So where you have in jurisdictions where sandboxes are used strategically, it can also encourage investments.
Yeah.
It can encourage investors, because what that means is that at least even if the innovation or the innovators are not licensed, there's already a pathway.
Okay.
There's a route to market, as I like to say, for them to first, get to market, test their solution with the regulator, and ultimately get that solution to scale, right, in a safe way. So that's good news for investors in such jurisdiction as well. So when you look at the regulator community, and this is not just the central bank, because financial services could be very diverse. You
Absolutely.
have certain regulators that look at things like insurance in certain markets. Yeah. Insurance is financial services, capital market, asset management. So these are different services that you could have different regulators looking at. And for these regulators, they really, really want to be able to enable innovation. But at times, the challenge is doing it efficiently. So being able to leverage technology to digitize the process means that you can do more with less in terms of resource deployment. But also, the effectiveness that I started speaking about in terms of effectively, managing the risk in the innovation. That comes from understanding the risk, and understanding the risk comes from the data that you can get.
Absolutely.
So we see a whole world where, everybody gets value from such a platform in terms
it's a
of
win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Wow, that is great to hear. So what is the vision for Africa, being that Ghana just launched theirs with Emtech? What is the vision for Africa? Like Africa is big.
Yes, it's good that you say that because we actually are very passionate at Emtech about Africa. And that's because we see huge potentials and we think Africa has an untold story.
Sure.
We have seen unique innovation, unique and peculiar to us in this market, in Nigeria and Africa at large. And we think that some of our problems in Africa, we wouldn't solve them the way maybe those kind of problems got solved in other parts of the world. If I give you an example, in Africa, in Nigeria, for example, we kind of leapfrog in the context of telecoms. So there are people that never use a fixed telecom line in their life. They just move straight to GSM and mobile and cell phones. And you see what that has done for businesses in Africa. You don't really need to have a physical location. With some of the social media platforms and some of the digital platforms, you can have an online presence. You are doing business.
Doing well.
Right. So that's Africa leapfrogging, Africa innovating, Africa using technology in a way to solve our problem. So we think we have unique problem in Africa that we can solve with technology.
Okay.
And we are seeing a lot of innovation happen in Africa, even amongst some of the political and economic challenges we have. We have very huge talent base in Africa, and you see that every day. Over the last few years, you've seen thousands of fintech emerge in Africa, and that is a sector that is really booming and compares,
especially among young people.
Yes, it compares favorably with any jurisdiction in the world. So how do we enable an innovative Africa in the financial services sector? Innovation that is sustainable requires regulation. So, our vision is that we will be able to provide Africa that one go-to platform through which you can innovate and regulate.
At the same time.
So it's a bridge that we hope that the regulators will put in place for the innovators to reach them, the Emtech digital regulatory platform. So for fintech that are looking to innovate, we really have taken time to design and build a best-in-class solution, really innovative. app.emtech.com is a place to go.
That's another platform.
Is the same platform we're talking about that the innovators can access. So if you're an innovator, you can onboard on the app.emtech.com. You will be able to engage with fintechs, with regulators across Africa.
Wow.
As we work with other African regulators like the CBN to come on board. Like you said, we recently launched with the Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
And we are working with other regulators in Africa, not only central banks, but other regulators in the financial services space.
Okay.
Like
you mentioned insurance and
yes,
so on.
Insurance, capital market as well. Not only in Ghana and Nigeria that we've talked about, but also in other parts of Africa. And we think we see a near future where, as an innovator in Nigeria, you can take your solution to Kenya, to Uganda, to South Africa without leaving Nigeria.
Wow.
Through this one platform, you'll be able to engage with regulators in all these countries. And what that also means that, for regulators, they have an opportunity to enable innovation and competition in their market, not only based on innovation happening in their market, but also innovation from other markets in Africa, other markets outside Africa that is looking at their country.
Wow, this is fantastic. Okay, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue. Don't go away. Welcome back from that break. We are still talking to the amazing Mr. Tunji Odumuboni. He's the ED Africa for Emtech. So tell us, you have a partnership with Globalinfoswift. Tell us what the partnership is about.
Yes, Globalinfoswift is a strategic partner for Emtech. We are really delighted to be working with Globalinfoswift. We have partnered on a couple of initiatives.
Okay.
One of it is FinReg Learn, which is an educational platform, thought leadership and educational platform that we are using to enable, we believe it's for us, our quota, contributing our quota to enabling the ecosystem,
Okay.
Both the regulated entities and the regulators across Africa to, get to understand some of these tools and technologies that we're talking about.
Because it will sound like jargon to some people.
Yes, because the reality of it is that a lot of these things are cutting edge and new, right? So people need to understand, yes, we hear about, a lot of people hear about sandboxes, and a lot of people read about these things, but there's one thing to read and get a definition of something. Is another thing to understand it at a deeper level of how it works and operates, how you can apply it to your business, how you can use it to enable, your regulatory process as a regulator, or to enable your innovation as an innovator. So, FinReg Learn, we had the inaugural version of that earlier this year. And we had over 1,000 participants.
Where did it hold? Was it virtual?
It was a virtual event, and an event that we hope to do every year. And we were able to engage a number of regulators.
How was the response?
The response was very good because we think that it was a platform and an opportunity for people to engage and interact. We had people from, IMF. We had people from, the BIS, the bank, the BIS, which is like the Central Bank of Central Banks.
Yes.
You have people from, other central banks in Africa, very senior resource persons from, for instance, we had the deputy governor of the South Africa Reserve Bank as one of the speakers. We had, a director from the Central Bank of Nigeria, for example.
Quite an amount of
so we had very
people.
senior and expert speakers on the different topics. And we had tracks like CBDCs, which I talked to you about, another area where we provide innovative infrastructures for central banks. We had also a track on open banking, which is another very important concept that underpins the way we believe the financial market and financial ecosystem should operate in an open way, sharing data and all of that in also a secure way. So we had people talking about open banking and also the regulatory sandbox that we're talking about. So we add that platform, educating people, providing thought leadership. And that's something that we partnered with Globalinfoswift on. And we're also working with Globalinfoswift on the digitization of the central bank regulatory sandbox for CBN of Nigeria. So Globalinfoswift has a long-standing relationship with the CBN, for example.
Already.
And, very entrenched also within the Nigerian market, understands the financial services ecosystem, and very plugged into the ecosystem as well. So Globalinfoswift, for us as a global firm, providing services across Africa. Emtech is based in New York. That's where we are headquartered. But, having presence across Africa, we know we need to have strategic partners that can enable us to, not only accelerate our deployment, but also, give us that platform through which we can connect and engage the ecosystem as quickly as you can imagine. This is innovation that has very far-reaching impact